is less concerned, less followed up by our industry. And in the past, you can see that actually the vessels have a long life cycle, like 20 to 30 years. And 20 or 30 years ago, the vessels were isolated. They are not connected on the internet, not into the network, so it is not internet-based. So there was no such issue of cybersecurity of the vessels. The vessels were pretty safe. But now we are seeing that the marine industry is speeding up its transformation towards digitalization. We are seeing smart vessels and smart shipping, and even in some specific waters and also regions, we are seeing government efforts on operating smart vessels or unmanned vessels. So cybersecurity has become an increasingly important issue and topic in our industry. Our industry is an enduring industry, and it has its land part. Even we are a marine industry, but even the land components of this industry is lagging behind in terms of cybersecurity. We are now seeing cyber attacks in terms of cybersecurity, and vessels can be a target of cyber attacks because the vessels are of high values, and the cargoes within the vessels will make the value even higher. So it will become a target of cyber attacks. The targets of cyber attacks. So cybersecurity is a very important issue for us to discuss in our industry. Maybe you can share with us some recent examples or cases where pirates or hackers hack into the systems of the vessels, causing the losses of cargoes or the damage of the vessels. Maybe any cases of this kind and some solutions or prevention measures. Yes, there are such cases, but before I share the cases, I would like to say that what are the risks facing our industry? There were two parts. One is those vessel companies or shipping companies on the land. They are no different from other companies on the land or on shore. They have their database, and if the database is hacked, you cannot operate anymore. And we are seeing the phishing tools, the attacks from the phishing tools. And you can see that we have not only IT technologies, but also OT technologies or operational technologies, and attacks targeting operational technologies are actually attacks targeting our many different device systems or vessel systems. And many of the vessel systems are controlled by softwares and systems, and these softwares and systems can be also the targets. But if the companies onshore are attacked, then it will be affected because the business may be interrupted and causing great losses. And actually, we can be very transparent on this issue because these companies are actually performing very well. There are some leading companies, and such attacks towards these companies are covered by the media. And we can see that one of the leading companies have been attacked by cybersecurity issues, and which cost about $300 million loss. And before October this year, maybe the end of September, we are seeing that another leading companies from France was also attacked by cyber attacks. And IMO is also one of the targets and the victims of marine security. So you can see that marine security issues are increasingly important to us. We are facing greater risks, and the attacks will cause financial and reputation losses, but also security threats, threats to vessel operations. If the systems, the the navigation systems, the piloting systems are attacked, we cannot control our vessels very well. Maybe the vessels will not operate or function very well, and will cause even further losses, such as damages to the environment. And also we are facing threats from the pirates. There has been media coverage about a container being attacked by pirates because the captains of the vessels was not in control of the vessels for 10 hours on the ocean, and some vessel systems has been attacked, and the vessels could not reach the destinations, and some pirates were able to identify the most valuable cargoes and vessels. And in some crime cases, some drug groups even targeted some terminals or ports in the Netherlands so as to better traffic drugs or smuggle drugs. So you can see that marine terrorism is also another important issue. When the vessels are captured or kidnapped by piracy or terrorists, it's very dangerous, and the vessels could be the targets of terrorists. And the vessels on the ocean, if kidnapped or attacked, especially some large vessels with LNG, and if the LNG exploded, it would cause very disastrous consequence to the ocean and also to the industry. So you can see that these vessels will become the weakest links if the industry is vulnerable to cybersecurity or marine cybersecurity. So there are three types of threats. Common threats shared by all onshore companies. Some data is hacked by the hackers. And the second is the systems or operation systems are hacked. And the third threat related to vessels. If the vessels are not under control, it will cause security issues or terrorism issues. So you can see that many of these threats are shared by many different industries. But what kind of suggestions and proposals for the marine industry to address these issues? We are now in the post-COVID-19 era. We are seeing actually employment of the sailors and other crew members of the vessels becoming an issue. But we are also seeing that cybersecurity issue is very important. So any suggestions or recommendations for us to better address the cybersecurity issues? The industry is working. It has been working. It is working. And we are an industry focusing on compliance. We have many different laws and regulations and international conventions. And when cybersecurity has become an increasingly important issue, International Marine Organization has developed IMC's 428 resolution, which require that the shipment companies to integrate cybersecurity issue into its operation. So by January 2021, the shipping companies and ship owners should implement relevant regulations by IMO. And even governments of different countries have already required or recommended and guided operations in this regard. And we are also seeing efforts from the industry, and BINCO and Ocum and also other industrial associations are making efforts. And as a class society, the NVGL has developed its own standards to guide cybersecurity resolutions for our industry. We should be compliant, and at the same time, we should reduce the risks of cybersecurity, and cybersecurity has become an element of our standards. We need to incorporate it into our management system. We need to rely on people. People are maybe the weakest links, but also the critical links in the cybersecurity issue. And we also need to build up our processes. This is very important. And third is technologies. Technologies are important, but if the people do not have the awareness of well using the technologies to address cybersecurity issues, technologies are just technologies. Maybe next I would like to turn to our lawyer and then back to Professor Mo.
Question is to Mr. David Luttinger, a partner at insurance practice at Covington and Burling. So I think that we've already touched upon a lot about what kind of threats we are facing, and what are the kind of measures or suggestions that we should come up with to help both shipping companies and, of course, operators on ships to deal with all kinds of cyber risks. And in light of this, could you give us your thoughts on what are the key elements shipping companies should look for when they consider increasing gravity and extent of cyber risks, and what do you see are the main issues managing these risks?
Thank you very much, Mr. Wu. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but can you repeat again? It's not that clear yet.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. The comments that were just made by Mr. Liu were very, very well taken comments, and they actually were some of the things that I wanted to talk about here with you this morning. Actually, the afternoon. I'm in New York, in the New York area. So, from the perspective of an insurance as a vehicle to protect companies in the maritime economy from losses arising from various risks, it's very important to, in the first instance, understand what those risks are. And so to manage a risk, the first step is understanding it. And in order to integrate insurance into that risk management profile, the insurance companies are also going to want to understand the risk. Now, companies operating in the marine economy know risk, right? Because the maritime economy has inherent risks. From the beginning of the maritime economy, we've had risks from weather and natural types of catastrophes. And we've also, from the very beginning of time, have had issues with human error that have led to accidents, that have led to boats sinking or crashing, and the loss of human life and property. Also, probably from the very beginning of the maritime economy, we've had risks from things like piracy, terrorism, and war. And from the very beginning of the maritime economy, going back thousands of years, the insurance industry has partnered with the marine economy in order to try and help the marine economy protect its assets, protect its businesses. And the beauty of the insurance industry is that they come along when new risks like cyber emerge, and we have seen that risk emerge, and it's very complex. They're very complex risks. But the good thing that I'm seeing is that insurance companies, maritime companies are paying a lot of attention to understanding these risks. I think we heard Mr. Liu mention that there are international standards that have been adopted. I believe he was referring to the International Maritime Organization, which has over 170 member states, including the People's Republic of China as a member, and they have promulgated standards, safety standards, that go back, I believe, 3 years ago already, maybe 4 years, where they've implemented standards, safety standards for the shipping industry. And those standards are going to be essentially a deadline has been set of January of 2021, just a few months from now, where the guidelines that are set out in those standards need to be adopted. And that's an important step in protecting the assets. And it's connected to the insurance question because insurance companies are not in the business of accepting risk wildly. It's not as if they're going into the gambling without understanding what the potential risks are. And so in order to buy insurance for these types of risks, the insurance companies in the application process, so if a maritime company wishes to buy insurance to specifically cover the risks of a cyber attack, the insurance company is going to ask the marine company, what type of systems do you have in place to protect your assets? And on the applications that are filled out in order to obtain the insurance, there'll be very specific questions that are going to be asked. And I would not be surprised if one of the questions are, does your company comply with the guidance from the International Maritime Organization with respect to risk management for cybersecurity? Be one question they would ask. I think they'll also ask, what type of risk management department do you have in? Have you invested in human resources? Do you have sophisticated, well-trained people to run your risk management department? And do they understand issues surrounding this emerging cyber risk? I think, as Mr. Liu is pointing out, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so it's important for players in the maritime economy to have good hygiene, what we call information technology hygiene in place, where they're protecting their computer systems, where they're conducting threat assessments to test to see if there's any vulnerabilities in their systems, where they go out and when they're dealing with third parties, consultants that they may be working with, are those companies also taking care of preventing against cyber attacks? Are the companies educating and training their own employees? Because a single careless or corrupt employee can cause, as we've seen, significant damage to a company's operations as a result of a cyber incident. Are maritime companies monitoring their systems all the time? Do they have things in place to try and identify attacks on the system so that they could stop it before it turns into a full-blown cyber attack? These things are so important from the insurance perspective because, as I was trying to suggest before, insurance companies are out there writing insurance coverage to cover risks of cyber attacks, but they're also doing very specific due diligence before agreeing to take on these risks. Now, we know that cyber insurance is a huge business. I think that the statistics that come out from PricewaterhouseCoopers or PwC in the United States is that they estimate worldwide cyber insurance premiums in in a given year approximately 2.5 billion US dollars, and they expect that premiums will go as high as 7.5 billion US dollars per year globally. So it's very large amount of premiums being written. And that's an indication, I think, that the insurance industry is willing to work with partners in the maritime economy who wish to fill in gaps for insurance risks or uninsured risks that they have now. If they want that specialty type of coverage, they can go into the market and buy it. Just like the insurance industry has adapted to write special coverages for terrorism related risks, war related risk, environmental related risk. We've seen the insurance industry adapt and provide that type of protection when the industry wants it. So I hope that provides an overview of how insurance can fit into the protection of maritime assets for companies that are facing these emerging cyber risks.
Yeah, I have two follow-up questions. Are you saying, as far as I understand, are you saying that some of the shipping companies are actually in a catch-22 situation? If they don't have a good system, robust process, adequate training of the staff, they will face cyber risks that not many insurance companies are willing to cover. So that's kind of a catch.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. I've seen this in other industries. These applications that the insurance companies require a company looking to obtain insurance are very detailed applications, very specific questions. And what happens is, if on that application you leave something out or you don't have the type of systems that the insurance company believes you should have in place, they won't even issue the policy. So that's one risk, right? You can't even get the insurance if you don't have minimum standards being followed. But even if you buy the insurance after you buy the insurance, if there is unfortunately an incident, a cyber incident that takes place that leads to a loss, the insurance company may go back, look at the application, and say, but you said to us you followed the International Maritime Organization standards, and we now think you didn't. And so you didn't tell us the truth when you bought this insurance, and now we won't pay the claim. So it's kind of a double whammy. There's double risk there. And that's why it's so important to be aware of the standards that are out there, take steps to protect the assets before a loss takes place, and then use insurance as a backstop if an unfortunate event takes place, and if a cyber attack cannot be foreseen and leads to a loss of business income, let's say, or unfortunate loss of life or property.
And another kind of a short question is, how do you evaluate how good these insurance policies are in terms of really covering unknown events? Because I think we have procedures, system, so that they should be robust enough to fend off common hacks. But then, of course, we know this is a kind of a chicken whatever game, because the villains and others are going to up the ante and come up with new innovative ways to try to take advantage of any weak link in the system. So how do we evaluate whether the insurance would be able to, given that if you are a leading player, like what Ms. Liu has already mentioned, many of these leading players still would have their system being hacked. So how do we evaluate how good the insurance policy is in terms of covering these unknown events?
It's a very, very good question. These policies that are being written are not standard policies that might cover somebody for a fire, a company for a fire, or for a car accident, or things like that, risks that have been around forever. These policies are highly technical, and one insurance company's policy language is not necessarily going to be the same as a second. And so in the purchase, in the process of purchasing this insurance, I think it's very important to have good advisors who, understand the different products that are out there, are trained to see whether or not one policy may have gaps in the coverage that another policy might not. And in the process of buying these policies, there can be a negotiation between the maritime company and the insurance company in order to try and make the terms better for the shipping company. And I think, may I say that I think insurance coverage lawyers like myself and other lawyers at my firm can play a big role in helping the maritime companies obtain the best policy possible. But that's a very important part of the equation, because these policies are constantly evolving. And as opposed to, let's say, an insurance policy to insure your car, these policies can be negotiated. And it's important to negotiate them.
That's really good to know. 好，我们现在再回到现场，我想这个请深圳大学海洋研究中心的副主任牟林给我们。
Okay, now let's move on to our next speaker, Mr. Moling. Mr. Moling is the Deputy Director of Ocean Research Center of Shenzhen University, and he will talk about the alarming systems and pre-warning systems about the uncertainties and the risks in the maritime industry. So could you please tell us what kind of alarming or the warning systems can be most effective in minimize the potential risk? Firstly, it's a great honor for me to be here. Today, we talk about the safety security of the maritime industry. This is a very big topic. Firstly, we know that when we talk about the safety, maritime safety, it is a very generic and broad topic. It involves the safety between the ocean areas of different countries. So that involves international relationship, and also involves the safety of all those activities taking place on the sea. So today I will narrow down the definition of the maritime safety. I mainly focus on two kinds of maritime safety. The first kind is that, for example, in the coastal area, how can we ensure the safety in the coastal area? And the second category I want to touch upon is the safety on the sea. For example, if we operate business, if we operate industry on the sea, how can we ensure their smooth and safe operation? Let me give you an example. Now, over the past years, we see that 48% of our maritime industry comes to the coastal tourism, and after that, we see things like the shipping industry and the exploration of oil and gas in the offshore areas. So we see that coastal area actually takes a very important role in ensuring the safety of the maritime industry. Let's take Shenzhen as an example.
If you first look at Shanghai, actually the CBD area of Shanghai is not coastal. But if you look at Shenzhen is a coastal city. The majority part of the city is coastal. And this city was established as a special economic zone 40 years ago. This is achievement by Mr. Deng Xiaofeng. But before its establishment as a special economic zone, it was frequently affected by natural disasters, especially and you will see that in 2017, there was a disastrous typhoon affecting the 20 million population in Shenzhen, this city. However, if you look at our prevention or mitigation capacity, it is not enough. But in 2018, there was another severe typhoon affecting this city. Because the rising temperature of our world, we are seeing increasing frequencies of typhoons and other natural disasters. So you can see that this coastal city, Shenzhen, were affected by 2 continuous typhoons. But luckily, we are building our capacity because actually as a result of the typhoons, and we are seeing that we now are able to better prevent and react when we have these typhoons attacking our city. And one of the typhoons in 2017 occurred in around the eve of the Chinese New Year's. But if you look at the typhoon in 2018, it was not around the eve of Chinese Chinese New Year. You can see that the typhoons were different in their seriousness or their impact on our coastal city Shenzhen. So economic activities of this city Shenzhen is very vulnerable to these natural disasters. You can see that actually 40% of the GDP of China almost relies on coastal cities, including cities in the River Delta region and Yangtze River Delta region. And if you look at shipping is also an important part of marine economy, and also oil and gas exploitation offshore. These 2 types of activities have their own security issues. They including technology or technical security issues, but we also have environmental security issues. When our vessels are operating or navigating on the ocean, or we are conducting drilling offshore, we have the threats or risks from the environment. If you look at the 5 years statistics by the Marine Affairs Bureau of China, we can see that 10,000 calls were made to report these accidents, and many of the calls were from the coastal areas or cities of China. So if there are any accidents, we need to consider both the security of vessels and also people. So this leads to another issue, that is marine search and rescue. We need to rescue people first and then vessels. So as Shenzhen is in the Bay Area, so the Bay Area is burdened with the demand or need to better search and rescue. Not long ago, maybe several days ago, we reported the missing cases of about 6 people offshore. So you can see that we are seeing many marine-related accidents. And also, if you look at offshore oil and gas exploitation or drilling, there are many other accidents because some problems occurring in the special links of the operation. We are seeing much oil leaking into the ocean and then approaching the coastal areas. So when we are exploiting energy or resources from the ocean, we also need to consider what these activities may have on our economic activities and also human activities. So you can see that temperature is rising and the ocean is not stable as before. And we now have more frequent interactions with our ocean. So the ocean security issues will become increasingly important and severe. So security, we need to ensure security. So from my background, I think that we need to better understand the marine environment by using big data. For instance, we need to better monitoring and forecast the accidents or disasters related to ocean, and we also need to calculate the best routes for shipping. And for oil and gas exploitation, we are seeing now that the existing operation is that for storm up to level 12, we need to evacuate operators and workers offshore. And we can rely on IT and internet-based technologies to better understand the ocean environment and to do monitoring and early warning to better secure the security of our vessels and our people. So with the technology progress, we can better ensure both the security of vessels operating on the ocean and also people both operating offshore and living onshore. So for people living in those coastal regions or cities which needs to better prepare themselves for typhoons or other natural disasters, we need to better or more accurately to forecast the disasters such as rainstorms or typhoons. So how quick, how early can we provide forecasts or warnings to people? Actually, we are building up our capacity in this regard, and we have made progress already. Because we have those computer-assisted simulation technologies and other internet-based technologies, we are making progress. So our performance are better than before, and the accuracy and precision are better than before. So we are better to forecast typhoons. Maybe 120 hours before the typhoon comes, we can provide early warnings to the cities in the coastal areas. But you can understand that actually the disasters and relevant systems to forecast the disasters are very complex. So to ensure 100% early warning is still challenging. And in the future, we will have frequent activities, frequent economic activities and human activities. So what can we do to better help persons in the marine industry to better have early warning provided for them and also better monitor and forecast ocean-related disasters? And I think actually operators or we say people are the major players in terms of security. We need to have legislation efforts to ensure the efforts of persons are compliant. And in 2018, I was in one of the islands in the Per River Delta regions, and one of the ship owners called me that 3 vessels sank last night. There was no typhoon, just some small scale natural disaster. And actually, Guangdong is also taking the lead in terms of a meteorological forecast. But because we don't have enough strong enough awareness of our fishermen or those ship owners, then we saw the happening or occurrence of the sinking of the vessels. Only one ship got searched and rescued. But the next day, I was very moved to see that all boats and vessels were used to search and rescue the sinking vessels and ships. But I think education is also very important. Legislation should be at the basic level, but for our general public and also the operators or all the members, all the players in the industry should have the awareness of the security, so better bring the threats to the lowest level. And the last speaker of today's afternoon session is Professor Wang Yiwei. He will be sharing with us the sustainability of ocean and how we can better promote international cooperation and coordination to drive better solutions, playing their roles in addressing marine issues. So, Mr. Wang Yiwei, please, can you hear me? Yes. I'm sorry that I am not on site when Shenzhen is celebrating its 40 years anniversary of its establishment as the one of the special economic zones of China, because I have a meeting here in Beijing, but we can through online conference to share with you my ideas and also listening to the ideas from other speakers. So my topic is about a marine community of a shared future and China's wisdoms and solutions for addressing ocean issues. So China is proposing the marine community of shared future because we understand that life starts within ocean. We need to treat ocean well instead of conquering them. We are now running up the resources on land, and also the resources of the ocean are also under our exploitation. But if you look at the area of the ocean, 70% of the Earth area is ocean, but 90% of the ocean is high seas. And we are also seeing that if we want to restore the marine ecology, it's more difficult than we restore the land ecology. So from these different aspects, we need to establish this marine community of a shared future to better address relevant marine issues. And in the past, China focused, or the Chinese culture focused on the integration of sky and land, but now ocean is also an important part of it. And I think in Shenzhen we have these offerings is highly relevant. Shenzhen is not a very traditional Chinese city because it is not only focused on the land area, it also have its ocean element, and it is also a global city, and it has a very different outlook on development, different from the traditional Chinese outlook, but more similar to that of the Western countries. So it is a young, innovative city. And we also know that Shenzhen is home to Huawei and Tencent and many other digital players who are very important to the development of the Greater Bay Area. And also Shenzhen is one of the centers of the smart manufacturing. And if you look at the development of human civilization, Shenzhen is a place we need to focus on. So it is highly relevant that we have this conference in this city. So in today's world, we need to address two issues. The first is that ocean has become an important medium in terms of globalization. The ocean used to be a way for the empires to have their colonization operations, but now we can see that 80% of the GDP comes from coastal areas.
Well, for some hinterland areas, most of them are less developed compared with the coastal areas. So how can we balance the development across different regions? And now we see some new policies, including the Belt and Road Initiative. And along with that, Shenzhen plays a growing role in China's international relationship, in particular in its relationship with the ASEAN countries. And in the past, we see a kind of confrontation between the oceanic countries and those mainland countries. But I believe we have to break away with such an old and outdated mentality. And also we see that today's world is confronted with paradoxy. That is, people believe the save the world rests with power of U.S., while the economy of the world rests with the growth of China. And they believe that the U.S. provide protections for all those countries, in particular the offshore safety. While you know that the U.S. now have been partnering with India, and also we see the increasing conflicts between China and the U.S. And recently we see that there are serious boycott against Huawei. You know that Huawei is one of the major vendors and for the mobile product, and Huawei used to be a very strong partner with the three major manufacturers of the undersea fiber cables. And now, in order to improve its relationship with U.S., now we have stopped our cooperation with those undersea fiber cable manufacturers. And also, in order to optimize the world trading patterns and to make the international trading pattern more smooth and fair, we now, with the Belt and Road Initiative, we try to set up a relationship with the Belt and Road countries, and in this way we want to set up a more fair playground for the international trade. So we should not just rely on technology. We should also pay heed to some historical and cultural factors, including hegemonism and also some Cold War mentalities. And also we have to break away from the outdated mentality of the confrontation between the oceanic countries and the mainland countries. And also we need to liberate the sea in an appropriate and sustainable way. People say that we are embracing the age of the deep oceans. We are trying to explore the undiscovered resources in the deep ocean. And I quite agree with that. But I also noticed that even for myself and including a lot of Chinese people, we know very few about the ocean, not to mention the deep ocean. And we need to have more visualized and digitalized information system that can help us to know more about the ocean, in particular deep ocean, the activities in the deep ocean, the resources in the deep ocean. And also we need to enhance China's collaboration with international organizations, including the European Union and IMO. And also only in this way we can set up a shared destiny between China and the rest of the world in exploring the ocean, because ocean is our common resources, and we should not simply focus on technology. We should also focus on those non-tech factors, and Shenzhen now plays a growing role in it. Now we talk about Shenzhen is a new pilot area for constructing the new socialism with Chinese characteristics, and we believe Shenzhen will play a very important role in this regard. Okay, I quite agree with you, and I also noticed that in your sharing, you said it's very important for us to break away from the traditional values and thinkings as a mainland country, and we should understand the value of ocean and try to understand the mentalities and the values of oceanic countries. You know that hundreds of years ago, people began to explore the ocean. And now we put forward the concept of the shared destiny shared community of ocean. So we, as a country that have embraced the mainland thinking for so many years, how can we break away from the traditional thinking and really embrace the oceanic age? Yes, just as you mentioned, we as a country that deeply rooted in the mainland areas, and we will also advocate a kind of traditional mainland economy. Now, when we talk about some island areas that under the territory distribution in the South China Sea, we call them our blue territory. And even this kind of definition have been ridiculed by some audience from the oceanic countries, because they think you cannot call it territory because they are not land, they are the oceans. And also you say that the South China Sea has always been the territory of China, and it has always been the water bodies of China within China's territory. And those definitions we use, those wording or phrases we use, in some cases are not in line with the internationally recognized or accepted wordings and phrases. And result, as a consequence, on U.S. side, they put forward a lot of criticisms in this regard. And now, you know that more and more international parties, including France, Germany, and some other European countries, they also want to participate in the exploration and development of South China Sea. So I think that also urges us to change our own mentality as a mainland country. And I read a book, and this is a book about the ocean civilization, and it's also talk about the exploration of resources in the sea. And from that book, I also have been deeply inspired, and I also come to understand the hegemonism on the sea. You know that some European countries used to dominate the ocean economy and the ocean areas for hundreds of years. And now we still see the hegemonism on the sea. So we have to firstly put aside our existing disputes on our territory on the sea. On the other hand, we should work hand in hand and jointly explore the resources in the ocean areas. And I think we should be more open-minded to work with international partners, including some Scandinavian countries in the North Europe. And you know, we also notice that many countries, the youth are not included in some international organizations like IMO, and we should give more sayings to them. We should invite them to participate, to be fully engaged in the ocean economy. While at the same time, we can work together and fight against the existing hegemonism on the sea. Now we have the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, and we also now have the Shenzhen as a pilot area for building a new socialism with Chinese characteristics. And also, we are talking about the ocean economy, including the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and even the Indian Ocean. So when developing the ocean economy, we should in some cases break away from the outdated mentalities. Yes, you said that we should transcend some old thinkings like the conflicts between the so-called mainland country and oceanic countries. But at the same time, we still see some hard realities like the conflict between China and U.S. I don't think the situation can be changed in the near future. The conflict between China and the U.S. may exist, may last for a long time. So China now also have our own interest and our own right on the ocean. Let's take the South China Sea as an example. We should try to reach more consensus in the joint and collaborative development of South China Sea. So on one hand, we have to protect the maritime safety, including we protecting our territory, protecting our sovereignty, but at the same time, we should be more open-minded in the joint development of the resources in the sea. Yes, that is a very good point. That reminds me of those stories happening during the Second World War. We also talk about the role of Germany at that time. You know that at that time, France and Germany used to set up agreement, and this agreement about coal and steel. You know, at that time, during the First World War and the Second World War, the most important strategic materials for the countries are coals and steels, and they set up such an agreement. And I think what we can learn from those old stories in the Cold War time or the World War time is that the alliance and agreement are really important. Now we are also developing the Silk Road on the sea. We are also developing our Belt and Road Initiative. But when we do this, we still strictly follow the international convention, and we will never use those agreement or lines for the military purpose. We just use them for the business purpose. And I think some technologies can help us to tackle the challenges like the blockchain. Blockchain versus algorithm versus a key. It can help us to transcend the boundary restrictions, and it can also help us to resolve the long existing challenges. And now we are in the 21st century. We should not still think in a way of the 19th century. We have to transcend those outdated old thinkings, and we also have to transcend the outdated confrontations between the oceanic country and the mainland country. Yes, you just mentioned some things like the technology, emerging technology. We talk about hacker, we talk about cybersecurity. We also talk about the importance of insurance, how to choose the appropriate insurer, and what kind of insurance policy are most appropriate for particular maritime and shipping company. So these are all important contributing factors for maritime industry. And also, in Professor Wang talk about the geopolitical situations in the maritime industry. Maritime, you know that the geopoliticals is something that we cannot evade in developing the ocean economy. So we should draw upon the past year's experience. So you can see our panelists approach the same topic from different perspectives. And here we can see the clash of insight, and also we can see the splash of wisdom. So here, once again, I would like to invite all of you to give a big applaud to all of the speakers and panelists.
那我们差不多时间到，大家也要去晚餐了。好，谢谢大家。
I believe it's time for dinner, so now let's wrap up today's discussion.